Can I get my directors to come stand with me in case there's any questions, and also to share your spirit with me up here? Okay, Denize, Sekwaze, Skaize, Samogat, Simhana. Staff, leadership, I'm so honored to be here to provide my annual report to you. We have a presentation. I'm going to try to be kind of brief and general because you already have in your reports all what my programs do. So I'll just introduce my wonderful directors. Here, where do we have? Do I have them all up here? Okay, I have Cheryl Thomas and Joni. Can you come up here as well? Joni's got, because we have questions. Davina's here. Okay, we have Cheryl Thomas, director of our prevention. She's been with us for 25 years. My God. And she's one of my, this lady is one of my heroes, let me tell you. And then we have Sonia Rowland, who's been with me about 18, how many years? Like 16 years. Feels like 30, she says. So Sonia, she's the one that the director of practice, quality assurance, guardianship. And our new kid on the block, Gwen Cardinal. And she's our director of community and organizational development, a role that was held before from Jason Morgan. We have Dawn Pearson, our director of early childhood development and a rock star. You've been with us for how many years? 16. Yeah. They just love me. That's why they're staying. And we have Davina Volk. You've been with us now for how many years? 5? Yeah, 5.5 years. And she's our director of community youth services. And Kayla, who's been with me since how long now? 10 years. So she started really young. She was 20. How old were you? 20. You were 20. She was 20. And she had her degree and then ended up doing her practicum and just never left. And then she has some of, she's got a wonderful, gonna be husband and children, and so she's grown up with us. Yeah, and then of course we have the mayor of Burns Lake. I think she should have ran for some type of office, who knows everybody and everybody knows her. But not just in Burns Lake. I go in random little community in middle of nowhere in northern Manitoba, talking to somebody, and then so I talked to Joni. Oh, I met this. Oh, that might be my relative. Do you know Joni Conlon? Oh, yeah, we know Joni. And then I go random little towns. She knows everybody. I think she should be prime minister, actually. So she's our director of safety. And so this is this fabulous team. And you'll see like how it's so important that they're all going to be working together when we go towards jurisdiction. So that's up to you. Oh, bring up the 2 blankets. But before I get started on our report, I have a couple of acknowledgements here. I just really wanted to acknowledge a young woman. So Mabel and Helen, if you could come up with me. Where is Leah? Leah. Is Leah here? Can somebody go get Leah? Louine? She's probably in the back working. Okay, but before Leah comes, yeah, come up here. But I just wanted to really acknowledge this person just for their strength and their sharing their brilliant mind and their strong energy and their soft spirit with us all these years. And I can't say enough about him. Jason Morgan is no longer in my department, but we still are going to be working together. And I'll tell you how important Jason's program was. So when we won the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, British Columbia never had prevention money before. So that meant there was no prevention money at CSFS or in community. And so what I did is I developed a position and looked at a structure to provide funding to the communities and to start developing prevention programs in community. And this was really important to me, like personally, like I think this was the most important thing that we needed to do and get it right. And so when I created this position, the Director of Community and Organizational Development, it was to respond to the influx of money that I knew that we would be receiving from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders. And we, in fact, we got millions of new dollars. That's how we were able to hire, we went to 400 staff, we quadrupled our budget. And so Jason was there with me, had sort of developed a template, developed a work plan, and to find the right person to actually see it to come to fruition, and that was Jason. And so the community service delivery plans, the way that we get funding to communities, the way that we do the reporting and support the communities to get activities in the communities, all of that really important work. We were really the only ones that had a mechanism to do that in British Columbia. And a lot of that hard work, even early days when we had no money for capital, already developing a structure for capital when we would get the money. And as soon as we won the capital CHRT 41, Jason and I met with AMA, LUMA, BC Housing, saying, hey, we're ready now because we're going to be able to get this money. We're going to eventually have an organizational structure. So Warner and, Jason and I really worked together, but, Jason taking that lead. And then we had another Jason Wong, that came, so we had the two Jasons. But I just really wanted to publicly acknowledge you and say thank you, my brother. We do have a blanket, if you could come up and take the blanket. And I do miss you, but you're just right beside me, and we're still working together. But just, I think on behalf of all our nations, thank you for the contributions and just really creating a great department. Thank you so much. Okay, do we have Leah? Oh, there she is. As you know, when all our hearts were just heavy and broken, and all our staff, everybody wanted to do something, and that everything happened on that day. And I knew that there was some staff going out. Everybody was doing something, and so what I said in the morning, I said, well, we need someone to be that central person. So I spoke with Warner, and I said, well, Leah's out there already. She knows the community. And she's young, but she can organize everybody. So it was actually Leah that came that morning, and I knew she was going back and forth. And I said, Leah, could you be the contact for CSFS, which is a huge undertaking for such a young lady? And she did it and organized, and I was just so proud of you. I just really wanted to publicly acknowledge you for all of that. Thank you, Leah. Oh. Thank you. Okay, so we have all our introductions. So this amazing venue, like when I came in here, I said, where am I? I can't be in Tilcasco. Like, what is this place? It's so beautiful. Like, it's so nice. Not that Tilcasco isn't beautiful, I mean, but it just looks so different. I was like, where? So I just really wanted to commend and acknowledge the team, the communications department, and specifically the events coordinator, Lydia Free. She's the one that was the bossy one that was wearing purple last night, bossing everybody around. So thank you so much, Lydia. She's the one, I could hear her voice all the time in the background telling somebody what to do. All right, so we'll get started with the presentation. Who's got the clicker? I got the clicker. Who wants a clicker? Yeah. Okay, we have, first of all, the Early Childhood Development Program under Dawn. It should be the next one. Yeah, right there. Yeah, no, this is the child one. Yeah, Early Childhood Development. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see all of these programs. We have the Middle Years Program, which provides services to 6 to 12. The Aboriginal Supported Child Development. Again, that's 0 to 18. The Children's Oral Health Initiative. Maternal Child Health. The new the Little Angels Daycare, and this Little Angels Daycare, this is the one that we're going to be renovating. That's here. The Head Start Outreach Program in Burns Lake, the Head Start program that we have. There's a lot to that. The preschool, the Best Beginnings Outreach Program, and the Canadian Prenatal Nutrition Program, and you can look in your report. And you can find all the statistics and all the people that we're serving, but it's just amazing how this program has grown and how Dawn is just an energizer bunny. She's able to go and go and go. And then when she's also the one that actually kind of has a little semblance of a work-life balance, because she's always like in Salmon Arm or she's doing something fun. I said, how do you do it and still manage this big department? And part of it, at Carrick County Family Services, you know that we have the life cycle approach, and that's how we provide the services, and we know where the gaps are in services. So the basic premise of the life cycle approach is if you have a healthy baby, healthy child, healthy adult, healthy parent, and on and on. So that's what the life cycle approach. So this is sort of the early years within that approach. Right now, the updates, we're still working on securing land. I think we're closer, working with Jason's department to build a Carriers County specific Prince George daycare, and that'll serve up to 38 children. We still have the community members that we're trying to support to get the early childhood education certificate. And again, that was started a long time ago with Mabel, and it was to respond to the lack of early childhood educators that we had within our nation. So again, that old, the saying that we have is, if we don't have them, we will build our own, and we really firmly believe that. So this is another example of how we're building our own to provide the needs of our community. We're also looking at renovating this space here at the Little Angels Daycare. I said Warner and I'll go for a little tour of it again, just to see. We got the funding to do that, and so we're excited about that. We still need to get a birthing center in Prince George, and part of that you'll see in Dawn's report, sort of this whole holistic way of birthing. Like we had the doula training, which was very successful. I love that. But one of the things that we know actually, and I was able to make the argument with the federal government to get some funding for this. What we know working with, and this was the late Sarah Hine, her and I were working with the hospital, and what we found, and we're trying to get funding for expanded maternal child health, is that it was over 60% of the women coming in to give birth at that time had maybe seen the doctor only once and didn't have the ongoing prenatal care. It was quite staggering. And so what was happening at the same time is that we were getting calls, and the ministry was getting calls, because our families, or our parents, they were waiting to give birth, and they were staying at the Camelot, which is still happening now, at the different hotels waiting to give birth. So if there was any complications, sometimes these mothers would have to stay with their young children 2 or 3 months sometimes in the hotel. And what was happening is that people would call, they say, oh, they're making noise, they're drinking, they're this, they're that. So they were under a microscope, and in fact, there was an increase in calls. So then we did a proposal in our business plan to say we need a birthing center, because then at least there would be like a place for them to stay and a safe place to give them birth. So I'm really excited about that, and hopefully we can see that come to fruition soon. We were able to, the equine program is so important, I really would recommend and suggest that if you can, talk with Dawn to see if you could actually go out and look at this equine therapy program. I'm so proud of that, because it is an exemplar for the rest of Canada. I was just saying that one of my colleagues back east looked at our mental health program that was run by Travis and by Marilyn Jansen. They looked at our equine therapy program, and they put them together in a proposal, and they've just been awarded $2.7 million in a smaller community. So a lot of the work we do, we share so that our other agencies and other nations could benefit. But this equine therapy program is amazing. I took my directors, we had our meeting in Fort Fraser, and we all went on the horse, and I didn't get bucked off, and I didn't cry, and I actually loved it. I was so scared of horses, but now I love horses. I even have my own horse, and his name is Baby Rip, and he's really cute, and I miss him already. I want to go back to see him. So prevention here is Cheryl, again, it's in your report, a lot of the family preservation. So Again, Carriage County Family Services really based on prevention rather than, say, intervention. And, you know, if we know about what the issues are earlier on, the better services we can provide. So Cheryl and her team are just, you know, really active in ensuring that we get those preventative supports if a family is struggling. Family Preservation, Urban and Community advocates for families with MCFD involvement, helps with appointments, refers families to others. And now that we have a legal department, you know, they'll be working closer with that legal department, because oftentimes, you know, some of the parents or whatever, there's things that they need help with filling out, like custody forms or things like that, all of these legal forms. So now that we're getting more and more legal supports, there's more work that we're doing together with our legal group. Intensive Family Therapeutic Services. Again, this is if you see in your report, it's a very successful program where we're able, again, to keep families together without children having to be removed. This is a program that when I was talking yesterday about how important it is to take part of the research and surveys, this program came from a research project where we looked at Our Children, Our Family, Our Laws, it was called, and we looked at all those years ago about, you know, thinking about jurisdiction. What is it that we need? How did we keep children safe historically? How do we, all of these things that we needed to know about making changes within child welfare so we could do it differently. What we found from that research is that the steering committee had said, well, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's a program out there already that's going to protect the children and make sure that the children can stay within their home or at least in their community, let's do that. So we partnered with the home builders. We made it culturally appropriate under Travis's leadership, and it's a very successful program. And so, you know, we have, if parents come in and they may lose their children, they have to take the intensive family preservation. And once they take that, it's a 5 weeks, 24-hour program, and usually that the children are not removed from them. The success rate is very high, and you can see that in your report. What we're finding, though, in our strategy, what we would like to do is to have that intensive family therapeutic service in the Burns Lake area and Vanderhoof, because this would be a foundational piece for preventing kids going into care, much like the Clan House and the other programs that we're doing. It would be part of that network of protective supports or preventative supports so children don't have to go into care. So because we can't get the staffing and the expertise needed, we're looking at different options. There is an option out in Saskatchewan, and you have to remember, BC only started receiving prevention dollars in 2019. The rest of the country had prevention dollars, not enough, but prevention dollars since 2007, 2008. So there are places in the rest of the country where there are really good programs that have been operating. One of those programs is in Saskatchewan, where they actually have the families that are coming in and they're actually staying in an apartment complex, and they have wraparound support so that their children don't have to leave their parents. It's much like the intensive family support, but our workers go into their home, but this is a place where that the families could come into a structure and have those wraparound supports. So we're looking at that. We also have the wraparound parent guidance and support, again, that preventative program. It's a really wonderful program, and I always say this, if you're ever in Prince George, to come out and check it. It's great because it's a hands-on program where the workers are there and the parents are there taking care of their children, and the workers are just supporting them and showing them how to discipline, showing them how to play, you know, how to cook, and it's a really nice feeling there. I do suggest you go there. We are rolling that program out here once we get the staffing and the physical spaces. The Family Empowerment Program as well. Bridging to Employment, we're excited that we are going to have the, are we calling it roving? What are we calling it? Roving?
For now.
Okay, we're calling it the roving Bridging to Employment. We've heard you again and again. Now that we have the funding to do it, Bridging to Employment has been around for 26 years, I think it is. 26 years? Yeah, 26 years, and it's a really successful program. So it's people that are, you know, high risk or, you know, just need some extra help, and then they take this, the life skills program, and they have a job placement, and then it's a really successful program. We have past participants who've actually, were like almost borderline, like living on the streets, that actually have gone through the program and now have graduated from college or university. It's a really successful program. So what we're doing is we have a roving program. So we're gonna have it in the different communities, and it's a 8-week course, is it? 9 weeks. 9-week course. And so that's what we're doing. So I'm really excited about that. We have some postings out to get that program up and running, and hopefully we'll get some good applicants. We have the family support groups, the life skills. These are some of the family support groups that we have. And what we're really making a concerted effort of whatever group that we're having in Prince George that we're going to have in communities. And again, you know this, the nations know this. It's so hard to recruit and retain staffing. One really nice program that we have is the Caring Dads, and it's a 17-week program. It helps fathers take accountability for their parenting, and I think this is a really good program. Just because oftentimes we've heard this before, and we're responding that there aren't a lot of programs for men or young men and fathers. So this is one of the things that we're doing, and I really like that program. Of course, in collaboration with CICAs and in the different nations, the Healing Fires, which is really successful. And I think it's not only that, it's so successful, and it's such a wonderful activity, because not only are you able to provide the support on the service, but it keeps this issue at top of mind for politicians. I've talked with Simon Yu, wherever I am, I always reference, we have these healing fires, like there's things that we can do, but so that they don't lose sight of what we're going through, the homelessness. And it's not only for politicians, but it's for people in Prince George that realize, well, it's an opportunity for education, I think, as well. So I'm just really thankful for Chief Mueller. Oh, and the next Healing Fire is going to be hosted by BCAFN. So it's something that's come out, and I'm just so glad Chief Mueller is here. So a lot of good things happening. We also have Sarah's House, and this is an initiative. Again, it's to respond preventatively. What we are doing, again, as I said, Sarah Hine, really a strong advocate for maternal child health, prenatal, and helping mothers that may be struggling. And so what we're doing is having this home where mothers are maybe struggling, maybe self-medicating, and so we want this house to provide them with wraparound support so that they could have a healthy birth, so that they could have a healthy pregnancy. We could provide the supports that they need. And so we're naming it Sarah's House after Sarah Hine, because I think it's so deserving. It's a project that's close to all our hearts, so definitely we want to do that. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that we do have an office in Vancouver, and we do provide preventative supports there. Just to keep in mind, we do not receive money for the prevention stuff in Vancouver from MCFD. We are dealing with that. We have to deal with that on a provincial political level. I'll reference that later. But we're also hoping to get an office space in Smithers, again, to provide those preventative supports, advocacy supports. So a lot of work that we're doing. And we do have an office in Fort St. James as well. People sometimes don't realize that. So we're really trying to get the services, offices where people are needing the services. So guardianship services here, this is under Sonia. One of the things I just wanted, that I'm thinking about, there has been many questions, and there's been things on social media about certain cases. I just want to rest assure you that it may seem that we are not responding or we're not doing something when you see the walks or whatever's going on. Trust me, we are, but we also have to maintain the integrity of the organization and maintain that confidentiality. It's not just for the parents, it's also for the children. So sometimes we'll get asked or we'll get criticized, and sometimes that little bit of that lateral violence. Send them to me, because the response, what looks like is a non-response is actually a response. We're protecting the confidentiality of the parents, of the nation, and of the children, especially the children. So I just wanted to put that out there. We take that confidentiality as sacred. So the guardianship services, we do provide children in care 0 to 18 years old. That guardianship again, so when a child goes into care, they're under a temporary custody order, and then later, if they've been in care for a long time, they're under a continuing custody order, and so the guardianship comes over to CSFS. So we're there to make those decisions for that child, to take care of their child when their parents are unable to do so. And that's what Sonia and the social workers do. So again, it's in the report, but really, again, with that, we really look at the holistic services and the way that we do things different from the MCFD. This is a really good program and a good example. The ministry will have like one social worker to 30, 40, 50, 60 sometimes youth, where we have the one social worker for at least 8 youth. And you think about the complex needs that our youth have, there's so much that's going on. You know, some of the social workers could spend 1 or 2 days just dealing with an immediate need for that youth. You know, there's educational needs, medical needs, there's all of these things that you think about it, how much time, you know, a cranky teenager takes when as a parent. So you could imagine if you have 8 cranky teenagers sometimes and they're running all over the place. So definitely, you know, this is all in preparation for us when we transition to taking over our own laws. We got to make sure we have a strong foundation moving forward. We also have post-majority agreements. Now, post-majority is really important. So in the agreement in principle that we have federally, when we were negotiating that a few years ago, Canada is obligated to follow the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders. And as you know, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders we won in 2016, which charged Canada with discriminating against First Nations children. So Canada had to stop the discrimination, compensate its victims, and ensure it never happens again through long-term reform. So when we were negotiating the agreement in principle with Canada, post-majority was not there. And so one of the things that Cindy and I and then our legal team really pushed for was to have post-majority. And so finally, Canada had said, okay, well, we'll have post-majority, and looking at the CHRT orders, what we have now is post-majority at actual costs. And that means, so to the age of 27, there are those support services. So right now we have provincial post-majority, and there is a difference in funding. Federal funding are for those children that were removed on reserve. Provincial are for those children that were removed off reserve. And so federally for post-majority, there's whatever the actual cost, that's what we build, that's what we get. We put in a business plan and we submit it. However, the province is by far lower than what we're providing federally. But we do work within the parameters, and then we enhance the program. So we have the agreements for post-majority agreements from 19 to 26. This is a provincial program in care for a minimum of 2 years on a youth agreement on their 19th birthday, in an out-of-care arrangement where, or were adopted after their 12th birthday. So this stage right now is like it's provincially, and then we enhance it federally, so it is that post-majority program. The program is voluntary. We're not gonna say you have to do this, but there are things that we also do with post-majority funding, and you'll see that in the youth services. Our youth center, the AGA, that is funded predominantly by the federal government, very little coming in from the province. One of the great things that happened, we opened up on September 6th. When did we open it? Yeah. Our Place to Dream is now open in Prince George, and this is a collaboration of the Friendship Center, Nasal Bay, NIA, Child and Family Services, BC Housing, and a limited from MCFD. And this is for housing for youth that are formerly in care with CSFS or with Nasal Bay. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, really nice nice apartment complex. And so we have these units, and it's subsidized rent, so that they still have to pay a minimal amount of rent, because you were teaching them life skills, and then they have their own kitchens, but there's areas to have, you know, to have group work and to have like a real family setting. It's a real comfy, nice place, and anybody that wants to tour that or see that, you know, Sonia is here, you can see that. So what we would like to do is have that type of place, you know, in Vanderhoof and in Burns Lake area. We also, Jason had talked about this, the $26 million money that we would be receiving from BC Housing. That's, we started that before COVID, hey, Warner? Like we started, yeah, so we started this, like years ago, but really before COVID, we kept saying there's monies there, and you know the BC Housing, over like about 10 years ago, they allocated monies for on-reserve projects for Indigenous housing. They had an Indigenous housing program. So we were able to put in a proposal, and Luma was a consultant that we hired to do the work. Jason Wong led that, Jason Morgan, our youth. It was really like a long, many years of planning and wishing and dreaming. You know, Amy was the one that was in charge of the youth services, and always wishing for a place like this. And so I'm just really happy that we got this funding, and 26 million, and 5 million of that will be a federal contribution. So again, once we get that up and running, we have so many youth that are homeless that we can have that, and I'm just so happy about that. Our resource services, again, this is where we support relatives that are you know, taking care of their children through this program. We have contracts that are federally and provincially funded, but we also, again, it's the foster parents, the resources, the homes that we have our children in. We do have different trainings for that, and we have done some recruitment campaigns. But one of the things that we're going to be doing really the next little while is being more active in our recruiting, and to get more homes in our community, more foster homes. I think because over the years we know this, that there hasn't been trust with MCFD, and so a lot of the education that we provide to our community members is to say, we're not MCFD, we do things differently. In fact, we have a lot of foster parents that come from MCFD to us because we're more responsive with their needs and meet their needs, so that they could provide that wraparound supports for the youth. And so that's what we're trying to do, again, in advance of getting our jurisdiction. You know, we say we want to bring our children home, and we absolutely want to do that. We can support that, but we need people to come forward. And it's not like if you're under the MCFD regime, so we really are going to be working with communications to have an active campaign. But like, why are you fearful of you know, coming forward to taking care of your cousin or your niece or whatever? There's the real fears there, rightfully so. MCFD has not been a good system, but we're CSFS and we do things differently. And so I think that campaign of helping hands, and really one of the things that we worked at our strategy for my department was looking at how do you build trust in community. So we have a trust strategy to see what is it that you need to feel okay to come forward to be a caregiver for your relative. We're going to try to respond and do that. We also have youth services. Davina and Kayla are the directors. We have what we do here. Again, a lot of this is in your report. We provide youth programming, Walk Tall, Pride, the language group, really the intent of the youth program all those years ago. And this started when we had really no money. We used discretionary funding under Mabel's department. And my first job was manager of community health programs, and I oversaw the development creation of the youth services program, and we had no money. But we still managed to have these big youth conferences, and we still managed to do all this stuff with, what was my budget? Was it even 90,000? It was real poor, I remember. But now we have this wonderful, we have youth centers, we have all of these wonderful things. So we're really excited. Now we have a director that just is gonna be concentrating on community youth services, and that's Davina, hiring those youth workers to complement the youth workers you already have hired in community. I do know in community again and again that it's very hard to hire youth workers. I know that. So if we can hire some, then we would, we will fill that gap and just work together. And so we hired Davina just to really be strategic in getting those activities. Some of the things that we're proud of this year is that we had Spirit Bear. We have the first inaugural exhibit that we partnered with the Caring Society, the Exploration Place, and Lady Tenay. So if you get an opportunity, when does it end? Is it extended till the end of November? Okay, so we have the exhibit extended till the end of November. So you should really go there. Take your kids, take your little nieces and nephew. It's great. And what it is we have the film Spirit Bear Makes History, and it's stop motion, those little claymation, and it's all the little film sets. And it tells the story of when we took Canada to court through the eyes of Spirit Bear. So it's a really wonderful exhibit, so I really strongly suggest that you go there. We also have, of course, the third annual Batlatch. It's a teaching potlatch. It's always so successful. I love that. This year I missed it, but we have many elders that go there. We still have the Walk Tall programs, the Back to the Land program. And then what was exciting to this year is that September 6th, the mayor of Prince George proclaimed September 6th as a Spirit Bear Day in Prince George. So Spirit Bear, AKA me and Cindy, got keys to the city, which means I could park in municipal parking spots. That's all I care about. So that's what I tell Simon. Let's just see if I get towed. Anyways, so that's really good. But it'd be great if Burns Lake would do that, and if Vandroff would take the lead, because that day for Spirit Bear Day, it's really what we're trying to get is their attention that there's municipal changes in funding and the way they do things, at every level of government to make the Spirit Bear plan come to a reality. Some of the things we're looking forward to is, the elder youth mentorship. We received more money, so we're going to be expanding that more. Again, more youth services in the community under the guidance of both Davina and Kayla. And we're also going into communities to identify ways to develop community-based youth programming to find out specifically, again, hearing from the youth in the communities themselves to make specific programming for them. We also have the upcoming Foundry in Burns Lake and CSFS, so that'll be co-located service delivery. One of the things that we are working on, again, with HR and Tom Patterson, is trying to get that youth care worker program going, and also the youth treatment center. That's what we're still working. We'll be working with Travis. A lot of some of the nations have come forward and said, look, we have a camp, we have an area, we would like something to do with our youth. So we are looking at that. We do have developing a comprehensive proposal. I have met with Richard Jock. I have met with Minister Whiteside, saying that we need this for the north right away. So what we're thinking, looking at what we've been hearing from the youth themselves, is that the treatment is fine, but they need something longer. And hearing that from the youth themselves is very telling. So what we're proposing is that we would have that 90-day treatment or whatever that looks like, just to get them off of the drugs, to do that detoxing so that they could be stable. And then wouldn't it be wonderful is after they're stable, they could go on into a young women's camp on the land, to have a treatment on the land, or a young men's camp, and we could do this throughout our territory. And then after that, definitely heard about that second stage housing, and then the 26 million we've heard from BC Housing to actually have them have a place to stay and support services so that they could stay on their road to recovery. So it's a long-term thing. It's not just treatment. We're looking at so that's that's exciting, and definitely that'll be one of my youth director's priorities, is to get that along with Travis's department. Community development. We're strengthening the relationships. I did talk about what Jason's program. Now it's Gwen Cardinal's program. We've developed the community service delivery plan, and so what we're doing is we're streamlining that template so the nation knows what their responsibilities are, what they can pay for, what we can pay for, and what we're going to ensure is that there's no liability when the nation staff makes decisions about child welfare matters, because we're delegated and we hold the insurance for that. So we're really, that community service delivery plan is just another way of clear roles and responsibilities. So that's, again, the community development. We also have the cultural piece. cultural activities. So some of the things that's exciting, what we're doing is that one of the strategic priorities is to really look at developing that Yinkadene culture and language initiative, or a center actually, to be able to put our things, our artifacts, and to have a central place. So hopefully we're able to, to convene that meeting and really start moving on that, and that'll be one of the strategic priorities for Gwen, to start looking at what does that look like. We've heard from you, we've heard from many elders that they want to have some place that's their own. We know that the Yinkadene Language Institute sort of went by the side, but how do we revitalize that? How do we get a center to protect our precious stories, words, voices, and artifacts? We also have, and cultural activities is Cheryl Boyd, and we're working with, to develop that Proud to Be book for each nation. So if a social worker, a doctor, or a child goes back into the community, they'll have a book that tells them about that nation, Proud to Be. So those are some of the, just briefly, some of the activities that we're doing. Again, most of it is in your kit. So I'm going to have to, another 5 minutes, David.
We're going to do lunch and then take questions.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to be doing lunch in a little bit here. They're just getting it ready, and then we'll do questions after, so I will be back. But I just wanted to give just a really brief overview of what we're doing provincially. Provincially, because I'm the chair of the Indigenous Child and Family Service Directors Forum and Our Children Our Way, we do have a big conference coming up at the end of October. So what happens there is that there's the provincial shifts in policy. We're there to try to advocate and push policy change, legislative change, regulations. And so when I'm at that table, I know what Carrick County Family Services needs, so I'm able to go to those provincial tables and push for that change that we need, especially when it comes to their laws. I'll give you an example. Like, for example, Bill 38 is a law in BC that is to harmonize with what's happening with Bill C-92. So we can use Bill 38 in the interim as a stepwise approach to getting to our own laws provincially. We also had pushed for an Indigenous director, and I'll just say, and LBN should be proud, that the new position, the Indigenous director, is Jeremy Bellier. And he's a Lake Babine Nation member, and that's the Indigenous director. So we have a provincial director who makes all the calls. Now we have an Indigenous director. I had my first meeting with Jeremy yesterday, and what we're recommending is that we take the Aboriginal Services branch out of MCFD and rest it under our Indigenous Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People Act Secretariat. So it would be independent, so we could actually make fundamental change. And Jeremy had a long conversation, because anybody that's ever worked within the ministry, we've had ADM, Deb Foxcroft, Maurice Squires, all these leaders in child welfare were never able to make change internally. So why are we going to reinvent the wheel? Let's move it out, and along with that, the budget. So that's an option I'll be pushing forward. We will be meeting with the First Nations Leadership Council to say what that mandate for that Indigenous director should look like, which is really exciting. We also have, of course, part of that is that we're there with they're developing a provincial jurisdictional funding framework, which right now I can tell you all the options provided does not meet the needs of Carrick County Family Services. So again, we're going to be the squeaky wheel to say, no, this doesn't work. We need to be looking at what our communities actually need off reserve. Why are we not fixing that disparity between off and on reserve? So one of the things we are doing provincially as well, we do have 3 resolutions from the 3 political bodies, BCAFN Summit and UBCIC, to support our children, the Directors Forum, to take the province to court under BC human rights, because the province, about 75% of our people are living off reserve. So we have prevention dollars on reserve, so we're able to pay for a lot of things on reserve. But the province isn't matching that. So there's a big disparity. And so we've asked them, we've tried to work with them, and they've still refused to do so. So we feel like after this interregnum, depending who gets it, well, it doesn't matter who gets into court, we're probably gonna have to take them to BC Human Rights Court, much like we did nationally. So just so you know, I know I'm gonna get that off-reserve conversation. We are dealing with that on a provincial level. Now, nationally, this is the big thing. This is the $47.8 billion that you've heard. Just to be very transparent, our society, our Children Our Way Society, which I chair, the Indigenous Child and Family Service Directors, voted unanimously to reject that $47.8 billion. The Union of BCIC chiefs had a meeting. They voted to reject it. We are having an important vote next week at the BC AFN. Saskatchewan chiefs voted to reject that. Quebec will be having their vote soon. So the reason, many reasons we're rejecting this, but there's just basic fundamental pieces. Then people think, oh my God, $47.8 billion over 10 years is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money when it's just a wish. We said $47.8 billion, show us the money, give it to us, and we will sign the agreement. Because $47.8 billion, we know that in the minutes, it's millions of dollars of interest in minutes. And we would take that interest and use it to reinvest in our families. But it's 47.8, it's a projection. There's no guarantee. And the 47.8 billion would be under an agreement which is subject to annual Parliament appropriation. So what that means is whatever government gets in, say Poilievre gets in, they can look at that 47.8 billion and choose not to implement it, or just implement parts of it. There's nothing legally binding them to that agreement. So we, right now, as we sit, based on the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders, over 10 years, just based on what we won, we would have 40 billion guaranteed protected. So what that means is that even if Poilievre government gets in, they still are legally obligated to follow the orders, which is 48 billion. So all of the wins that we've had, prevention at actual cost, that would still stand. All of the CHRT 41, that would still stand. Right now, within this agreement, the capital, you know how we have CHRT 41, you submit an application, you get the funding, it's an actual cost. That's how we got the funding for the Clan House. That's how we got some of the monies for, Skies, all of this stuff. We just put it in actual cost. What this bill, or what the agreement suggests, is that there would be a cap, and that we would have to put proposals in, and the proposal would go to the Chiefs of Ontario, NAN, AFN, and Canada, and they would decide how much money we get, if we got any money at all, and it would be capped. So there's no darn way that BC will ever, ever, ever give up our decision-making to the Chiefs of Ontario. That there's just no way. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is the simple fact that the agreement was made without the Caring Society. So Cindy and I were not at that table because we took Canada to court. So they're expecting us in good faith to accept this $47 billion. Oh yeah, we'll give you money over 10 years. Yet, while we were negotiating, Canada did not uphold the orders for Jordan's Principle. So we are in court with Canada right now, again, for Jordan's Principle. There's over 8,000 backlog. How could we sit there and trust Canada when they can't even uphold the orders when they're ordered to do so, and we're sitting at the negotiating table in good faith? The one thing too I'll let you know is that the First Nations Leadership Council became an interested party in the Jordan's Principle case. So all we're asking is Canada to abide by the work plan so that there wouldn't be such wait lists, so that our children could get the services they need. We just had a service last week, a funeral service last week. There's going to be another memorial for a young boy, and you heard it on the news. The parents and the caregivers and the medical professionals were constantly asking for a fenced area for this little 6-year-old to be in a fenced area because he had autism. And what happened is that he ended up leaving because he didn't have this fence. They wouldn't cover that fence. It's a Jordan's Principle request. The thing is, Jordan's Principle in other areas of Canada paid for a fence, but in this case, they didn't pay for a fence. Kid leaves, little guy leaves, and then they found him 24 hours later dead. So there were 2 situations like this in BC. So that's why or in Manitoba, so when we saw that, we decided we can't do this anymore. We can't sit at the table while kids are dying. So December 8th, we filed a non-compliance order. And that's why, and so did the First Nations Leadership Council. So on September 8th, the first hearing, we actually had the AFN lawyers and Canada opposing the First Nations Leadership Council and opposing the Caring Society. I couldn't believe that this was happening in this day and age. So the very ones that are opposing Jordan Principle are the very ones that negotiated this $47.8 billion. So they're letting Canada off the hook because Canada wouldn't be bound by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And so they're the only way that we've made all these wins. We've taken Canada to court now 22 times. We've won every time. And so if Canada goes off and the CHRT has no longer any say, I don't trust them to do the right thing. And this is why we're rejecting the $47.8 billion. I will be around if there's more questions about that. But I just wanted to leave with you, and I'm really sorry that I'm going over. But the one thing that I really liked this theme, our spirit is precious, because when we think about all our history, how many times our spirit has been touched negatively? Colonization, residential school, going to Catholic school. I remember it was so weird when I was going to Catholic school and I kept getting hit on the head, and my brothers were getting hit on the head, and it was horrible. And I told my mom, and my mom was like, how dare they touch your head? Like, it's your spirit, right? Like, you can't be doing that. And so when I think about this, like, why is our spirit precious? And how do we need to protect that spirit? Because it's a gift to us from the Creator. We know that our memories are passed down to us by our ancestors. It's in our blood. It's all the stories, all of the songs, it's in our cells. And one of the things that we know are all the strength and the resilience of our ancestors. It's in our DNA because it's in their spirit, which was passed down to us. And that's why our spirit is so precious. That spirit is a spirit of resilience and of strength. And this is a spirit that is going to guide us into a future. We can't be moving forward without that spirit, without our spirit. Because the only reason we're here is because of that spirit. Without that spirit, we are nothing. And I think this is one of the things that we know, that it's our stories, it is in our blankets, it's in our art. We could feel that. We saw that beautiful fashion show last night. But think about this as Indigenous people. When we are hurting, when we lose a lost loved one, how do we keep each other strong? We say we hold each other up. It is that we share our spirit of grief at that time. I certainly knew that when I had lost my son, that I would not be standing without the spirit of the nations that was holding me up, my family and my ancestors. And then when we have that beautiful potlatch, when we let go, what are we doing in that potlatch? We are letting go of their spirit so that they could be free and they could dance. Warner, reminds me when we had lost Perry, and the beautiful ceremony that on the first day of mourning, second and the third day, they let that spirit go, and then they're saying that they're dancing, that their spirit is dancing. I always think about that. And so you'll see in everything that we do how important that spirit is important to us. While we are together, like when all the clans together, imagine that it's all the spirit of our ancestors that are together, and when we do that prayer, we're calling our ancestors in, we are calling that spirit in, and more now than ever, we need to do that. That's why that spirit is so important. It is how we are going to survive this opioid crisis. It's how we're going to overcome that. We are bringing our spirits together, and it's unique to us. Like, we are unique as Indigenous people because the spirit that we have in us, that's what makes me Takla. The spirit that has in you, that's what makes you Stilatan, what makes you Tilkasco, which makes you Unadot and Elbian. It's that spirit of our ancestors that makes us unique and different, and that's why it's so important, because our most precious spirit is our children. It is the only reason that we are still here is because we have our spirit and we protect our children. So when we think about our most precious spirit that we all share is our children. And we must do everything we can to protect that. Because we remember that it is our spirit that's going to bring us into the future. And it's those little tender ones. Our elders, you know that. Us in our language, we call it lachnok. That's our spirit. But how beautiful it is together that we're here together and we're sharing the spirit and our energy together so that we could do better for our children and families. And with that, I want to thank you, Masai.
Thank you, Mary. That's an excellent report. Before we get on to lunch, we have to have lunch. We'll get Mary back up here to handle any questions or receive any comment.
Jen Hunzo, die Atan Barinli, Sop Barinli, Zanawa Kanis Hak, Hablarenda, et Messiah de Desni. Ladi Atan Skak Habasuni, Mande Barayiltek, Zanawa Kani. No pe haikadini lakai anzan zanidin deal patadatli et dua sabe edatni et one you the deck cut Yahudi theater dua edat. In my language, I just said that, you know, Mary, you're doing a very good job with protecting our young people, our children, and it's important that we do that. That, you know, we keep moving ahead, helping our young people. In your report of the $47 billion and other issues around it, you said that the people that applied or negotiated that money is now suing you and others. Is that what I heard?
No, no, I'll clarify that. So what's happening is that, so when we had to file an order of non-compliance, so the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal gives Canada orders that they have to follow. For example, like you have to pay for capital. That's what the Canadian Human Rights, so Canada has to follow those orders. They did the same in Jordan's Principle. Canada had to follow the orders in Jordan's Principle. Now, when they don't follow those orders, what we do is we have protocols where we meet and we work together. So what we ended up doing as a caring society, we met with Canada and the parties and said, this is the work plan that we all agree to ensure that all children that need Jordan's Principle have quick access to it. Canada refused to do it, and plus they were making it more difficult. You talk to Rhoda Holgren and anybody across Canada, Canada was making it more difficult to access Jordan's Principle. And so finally, after, like I said, those deaths, what we had to do, we went back and filed an order of non-compliance to the tribunal to say, look, Canada is not complying. Canada was denying requests that they shouldn't have been denied. For example, here in BC, this little girl had, her parents had passed away. There was a potlatch to get the child to her funeral, to do all of this stuff, and the potlatch pieces, because in Jordan's Principle, it talks about cultural activities, that was denied by Jordan's Principle. Basic necessities were being denied, so we had no choice. We took them back to court. Now, what ended up happening, in order for that to be stronger, the First Nations Leadership Council of BC came in as an interested party. So it'd be the Caring Society and the First Nations Leadership Council in BC. So we go and say, this is why we have an order of non-compliance to Canada, and the tribunal overhears that. At that court proceeding, the AFN lawyers and Canada were on the same team. The AFN said that they basically were denying that Canada was not complying with it. So right now, that's what's in the newspaper, where we're at odds. So the tribunal basically said, you know, AFN, you have to work with the society. That's what's going on right now.
Okay, thank you for the clarification,
Yeah.
but I think you said the AFN lawyers.
Yeah.
Are they instructed by Cindy or the regional chiefs to oppose what you are doing?
Well, this is the thing. So there are how many chiefs? So there's 5 chiefs that are like opposing what's happening, how it's being done, and the other chiefs are either abstaining or not, or voting for Cindy. But at the end of the day, the instructing person is the national chief. So,
Interesting.
and I'll tell you this, so remember, Wolf, we had that conversation on becoming an interested party. The reason it's important that, you know, when I asked the chiefs to be interested parties, you'll see in the $47.8 billion agreement, the chiefs of Ontario and NAN get a huge chunk, way more than the rest of the country, because they signed on way back in 2017, 2016 to become an interested party. So they're interveners, and that's why they had a seat at the table. Their lawyers had a seat at the table. So that's why the First Nations Leadership Council, we got them to become an interested party. We need the chiefs and the First Nations Leadership Council to become an interested party in the long-term reform as well. So when we reject, I want to remind them, we're not rejecting $47.8 billion. What we're rejecting is the agreement. So what we hope to happen is if we reject the agreement, and then we could start afresh with a true negotiations team with better principles, with an actual process, and then we would have the interested parties to be at the table with us. So it just wouldn't be just the chiefs of Ontario and NAN at the table. We would have the BC representatives there as well.
Okay, thank you for the clarifications, and I'll have an interesting discussion with Cindy on this one.
Yes, for sure. Thanks, Wolf. Okay, I'll just go through. Any other questions right now?
Mary, we have some online, but you can respond.
I got them.
Those are the ones you have came in before.
Okay, which one do you want me to respond to?
You go ahead.
Okay, I'll just respond to a couple of these. One is, how many children and youth in care have been reunited with their families? So in the last year, we've had 13 children return from MCFD to community in Vanderhoof, Fort St. James, and Burns Lake. The Urban Family Preservation Team has had 27 children return from September 23rd in the last year. And the Family Empowerment Team had 16 families reunited from September 23rd to September 2024. And that's really because all of a sudden now we have this prevention money, so we're able to get that reunification number quite a bit higher. So kudos to the wonderful team. It's a lot of work, but I know it's really valuable. It's so important. So the other, does CSFS make it a point to get to know the families of the children and who you removed? Well, we don't do the removal. Ministry does the removal. Does CSFS know when the families have made changes to get their children back? So we actually do. So if those children have been removed, we do have our family preservation team, both in Prince George and in the communities, and that's who works with the families. So they work with them to make those goals and the changes that they need to make and give them the support. So I think that's what's really important. So those families have case-specific goals as well. And so if there are risks, then we have a plan, and then we help the family follow that plan. So we're able to know what's happening in the family, and we're able to know and support them. And so there is those regular meetings with the family. It's quite ongoing. We have quite consistent contact with the family so that they could work on those goals that they agreed upon. We also know that while we're walking with the family, it's throughout their whole journey to get their children back. And so they're very well in tune, knowing what the legal parameters, their goal work, and all of that is, so that they can keep their children with them. But before that, even if the children had to be removed, we were already working with them to try to prevent that. So absolutely, they know the families. And what are the questions online?
Before I go to online, we do have a question that was submitted in the room from Aunt Grace Duncan. It's about post-majority, which you did cover in your presentation, but specifically for youth that are aging out, and some of them, she's saying, are aging out in apartments alone, what is the new process with post-majority funding, and how do the youth access it, and who is eligible?
So again, the post-majority, as I said, there's a difference between federal and provincial. However, when there is a child, one of our Carrick County childs, we do have those plans for them when they are aging out. All of our children have those aging out plans. And it's actually a really good now because we actually have the funding to support those plans. We used to have plans, but there wasn't a lot of funding after the age of 19. So there are funding for that. And so we have our guardianship social workers, our social workers that work with them. We have our youth workers that work with them until they're the age of 27. Now remember, this is a voluntary service, so sometimes the youth, we can't force them. If they've, they're 19 years old, if they want to do their own thing and they don't necessarily want our service, we can't force those youth to do that. We could just say that we're here, and when you're ready, that's what we do. What was another question?
Thank you. This next question came to us online when you were talking about Sarah's house and the other developments. And this person is asking, is this going to be similar to like a Ronald McDonald House or Aboriginal Lodge? And she further states that it would be great to have a lodge type apartment building for long-term medical stays.
We've heard that. I think that's a Travis question, but definitely I know that has been an ongoing issue when it comes to health. But as far as the sort of that birthing center, that's what we would like is, when the mother is expected, and sometimes there's complications, and they're coming from all over the place, all over the north. That's what we would like to see. The Sarah's house is not necessarily like a Ronald McDonald House. So if you look at what Harmony House, there's wraparound supports for that, for the mother that is going to be giving birth, and even before that, with the children. So we would provide the supports to the mother during that time.
We also have questions around our services for unhoused people. Specifically, if you could talk a bit about the work that we do in terms of outreach and support.
Yeah, so we do have the outreach work that we already do, but we also have a program that's been led by, how could I forget his name, for heaven's sakes? He's been with us forever. Pat, for heaven's sakes, Patrick Kuhn. So yeah, we do have that, and there is that homelessness. We've been a part of that for 20 years, if not more. And so we do the soup bus. We do have some support. We do have some outreach programs. And then we have the Family Preservation Outreach Housing Program that offers those supports in Prince George. And what we're working on is expanding that the program, and which is in progress right now, to take referrals from Burns Lake, Vandorf, and Fort St. James. So we do have a program. But definitely what I would like to see, though, and I've been working with, talking with Mayor Yu, is actually just specifically to the youth, but actually to have a Prince George Indigenous youth strategy, which would incorporate that youth homelessness, which we know that the numbers are escalating. So definitely have something like that. And then for us, the $26 million project that we have in Prince George, we want to replicate that in the rest of the communities, but that is going to alleviate hopefully some of those the youth homelessness crisis right now.
Okay, and I have the final online question, and it's about the healing fireworks in coordination here with the other unhoused issues. Has there been a thought to having the healing fire services brought to Burns Lake, Houston, Smithers, any other area?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that. If any of the nations want to host that, our staff support that. We really took the lead from Chief Mueller. And just saw what they needed, and they had somebody that was helping us coordinate it, and then we had somebody that we identified to coordinate that. But for sure, if there's anybody that wants to host that, we can always host the first one and then have the leadership and other people from the community host the next ones, for sure.
Ms. I just got handed a question from the floor. For what reason do you split the money for foster care?
Do we split the money for foster care? Is that on and off? What is the question? So the monies that goes directly to the foster parents, right? That's it. Like there's no splitting with us, or it just goes directly at the rates for the foster care. The one thing though, that's ministry, right? Like how they do that. What we really try to do, what we do is if we have the ability for out of care options right now, and we're able to pay for the same rate if need be, to keep their children with them. And I think that's a big difference. So I don't know about the splitting thing, but for sure, like if the money goes from the ministry goes straight to there's nothing that comes to CSFS for that.
Sorry, I wrote that wrong. What I meant was why the money is split for the foster payments. I was going to get transferred to Carrier Sakani, but I was told that I was going to get a payment in the first of the month, and then I was going to get a payment on the 15th, and I didn't want that.
Oh,
I didn't have a choice if I wanted that or not.
okay. So the reason we did that is because most of the foster parents, I think all of them, when we were looking at how to make things better and we, talked to them, that's what they wanted. They wanted it every 2 weeks because some of the families didn't have, especially the ones that, that we were really supporting, didn't have the opportunity to have like the money at the beginning and at the end of the month. So it was actually based on what all the foster parents had wanted when we were making changes to make our program better. So that's why we split that. If there's an issue, then you just can talk to your worker, and that's an easy amendment.
Mary, we have another question that just came in. What happens if it is decided at the draft agreement meeting in Global Calgary, it is decided it isn't enough money?
Well, let's think about this. Negotiations 101, you never accept the first offer. It's not going to be enough money, I can tell you that. We're going to say no, and we're going to go back to the negotiating table. You have to remember, we've been doing this now since 2006. We've been at this fight. It's been over 22 years. So we're not going to drop the ball at the first yard line right now because we're so close. I'll just tell you what happened with compensation. The first offer was $5.2 billion, which the now National Chief signed off on. We came back, the Caring Society, Cindy said, this is what and we said it's not enough money. So they gave us $20 billion. They said, okay, $20 billion, here you go, it's $20 billion. And we said it wasn't enough. There was a lot of negativity, there was a lot of flack, but we knew it wasn't gonna be enough to make sure that all those ones that had the right to compensation to have that money. And so we went back. Again, it was ordered by the tribunal because we said we disagree with this. It's not enough money. They're gonna be leaving people on that should get compensated. They're not gonna be including them in this. And then the tribunal agreed with us on every point. So then they directed the AFN and Canada to go back to the table with us with our input. And so what it went up to 24.3 billion. 24.3 from 5.2 billion, which they would agreed on. So if you think about those same negotiators are at the table, and Canada and AFN, they're saying, oh, 47.8 billion is gonna be covering it. That's their first offer. We're saying we need evidence-based, we need the experts to be part of that negotiation. So what we're gonna say is we're gonna reject the final settlement agreement as it is because it doesn't meet the needs of our nations. We know that certainly doesn't meet the needs of BC, we just saw that. We're just getting the numbers in. So we're gonna say we reject this offer, or we reject the agreement, and then we're gonna propose how it should have been done right, that you actually have a negotiations protocol, a proper process, that you actually have people at the expertise that their children deserve, that you actually have proper negotiators, not a bunch of non-Indigenous lawyers quietly hiding in a room, not transparent. We're calling for transparency. We're calling for proper representation at the table and the proper expertise to have evidence-based negotiations. If you have a forestry negotiations, you're gonna have a forester. If you have mining negotiations, you have biologists, miner, everybody. Why is it different with child and family? Children are our most important resource. We should have the best people at the table advising us. That's what we're pushing for. So we're expecting more than 47 billion because our children deserve that.
Ooh. Mary, the person who asked the question online in all caps says yes. Thank you. And those are all the questions online.
All I gotta say, this isn't our first rodeo.